To the distinguished panelists of our proposal hearing today, the ever-dynamic Dean of the College of Teacher Education, Dr. Maria Elena S. Mandin, the competent chairman of the Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Mathematics and Social Studies Department, Dr. Renario G. Hinampas Jr., the brilliant Doctor of Philosophy and Philosophy candidate, Professor Francis Zeus Ibanez, our respected and excellent research advisor, Mr. Elmer Saligumba, and our exemplary research instructor, Ms. Rose Ann Palma, my fellow researchers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We are Group 8. I am Aileen Diaz-Uno, together with my groupmates, Ernest Futuhot, Sheila May Mule, and Hannah Lois Tutor. We will be presenting our study entitled The Effects of Pandemic to the Livelihood of the Farmers of Carmen, Bohol. The problem and its scope. Farmers are the backbone of our society. Our entire population depends on them for they provide us food for consumption, but due to pandemic, their agricultural activities lessen. The pandemic caused too many restrictions, which includes the travel of the farmers' agricultural products, social gathering limitations, and the closures of some markets that surely affect their daily livelihood activities. This study will explore the effects of pandemic to the livelihood of the farmers of Carmen, Bohol, and its purpose is to help those striving farmers who were deprived from an easy life to live more contented and comfortable, receiving privileges which they truly deserve. Furthermore, this study seeks to provide policy implications for the future agricultural policies, targeting agricultural support from the government and non-government organizations on provincial and national levels. Now, this is our theoretical and conceptual framework. So, our title is the Effects of the Pandemic to the Livelihood of the Farmers of Carmen, Bohol. And we used 3 theories for our study. So, Scholt's theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the location triangle theory. So, for the legal basis, we have 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 13, Section 5. We also have the Republic Act number 7607, empowering smallhold farmers in their economic endeavors. So the variables under our first problem, which is the effects of the pandemic to the livelihood of the farmers, we have expenses, income, lack of markets, demand, overproduction, low production, and added product costs. And for the effects of pandemic to the agricultural products of the farmers, so field crops, vegetables, fruits, and nuts. So we will be utilizing the result of the study to propose an action plan. So to explain the first theory in our theoretical basis, so we have Scholt's theory. Agriculture is one of the major livelihoods in the Philippines, and some of our farmers here still practice traditional agriculture. Scholt's theory, 1987, is all about traditional agriculture. Traditional agriculture refers to farming that is based completely on the kinds of factors of production that have been used by farmers for generations. The researchers are aware that only few of the farmers in our country have adopted advanced technologies in agriculture. These kinds of farming sometimes produces unsatisfactory results, and that the income can be gained by it are very low. Scholt's set out to provide a solution on how conventional agriculture can be transformed into an increasingly productive type of farming. It is quite wonderful how farmers fed the whole world, especially during this pandemic. Though sometimes we cannot see their adversities, they deserve something better. Most of the farmers are still using conventional ways of farming, and they needed to upgrade, especially nowadays. The pandemic serves as a game changer in which we saw their needs that could help strengthen the farmers and the agricultural sector. This theory will support how the agricultural activities of the farmers will be much more affected with the pandemic if they still use traditional ways in agriculture. So Ms. Hannah Lois Tutor will further discuss the other 2 theories and the legal basis, as well as the statement of the problem and the null hypothesis of our study. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Miss Uno. So next, we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it is a motivational theory which expresses that those 5 classifications of human needs dictate a person's behavior. So the first 2 needs on Maslow's hierarchy, which are physiological needs and safety needs, are essential, especially amidst the global pandemic. So physiological needs are the most fundamental human survival necessities, which include water and food, enough rest, shelter and clothing, reproduction, and overall health. And Maslow expressed that these fundamental physiological needs must be sufficed before humans move on to the next level on the hierarchy, which is the safety needs. So safety needs include emotional stability and well-being, financial security, and health security. So these things have become so much more important as this pandemic hit us, especially to the livelihood of the farmers. So while we are facing the pandemic, the physiological needs and safety needs of the farmers are being affected, and it means that it could also affect their livelihoods too. So next, we have in the theory of Alfred Weber, 1929, called the location triangle, it looked for the best area for the production of a good based on the settled locations of the markets and 2 sources of raw materials. So he sought to identify within the triangle the least cost production location by calculating the absolute expenses of shipping raw materials from the 2 destinations to the production site and product from the production site to the market. And the weight of the raw materials and final commodity are critical determinants of the location of production and of the transport costs. So with the restrictions and safety protocols imposed by the government, the transportation of the products from the farms to the markets has been hindered, so which affected the overall process in agricultural businesses and farming. So it has also affected the prices of agricultural products. So, and in other words, Weber's theory focuses on the costs of moving raw materials and the costs of moving goods to the market. So which is really pertinent to our situation nowadays, where the costs or the expenses of the overall process of farming is being affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic and its restrictions. So stated also in the literature background are the related studies from local and international. So they highlight the visible effects of pandemic to the livelihood of the farmers. So they includes how the pandemic reduced the income of the farmers, how the restrictions affect the transportation of goods, how the quarantine affect the production, and how the pandemic changes the demand and supply as well as the prices. So next we have the legal basis. So section 5, the state shall recognize the right of farmers, farm workers, and landowners as well as cooperatives and other independent farmers organizations to participate in the planning, organization, and management of the program, and shall provide support to agriculture through appropriate technology and research and adequate financial, production, marketing, and other support services. Article 13. Section 5 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution suggests that the state is obligated to ensure the success of the government-based agricultural programs in increasing agricultural efficiency, productivity, and improving the social and economic conditions of the beneficiaries thereof, both the farmers and farm workers. So furthermore, the right of landowners is likewise recognized because even as the program is also designed for them, they have a great role to play in its successful implementation. So section 2, declaration of policy. So it is the declared policy of the state to give the highest priority to the development of agriculture such that equitable distribution of benefits and opportunities is realized through the empowerment of small farmers. So while the state recognizes the fact that the welfare and development of the small farmers is their primordial responsibility, the state shall provide the necessary support mechanism towards the attainment of their socioeconomic endeavors. So pursuant to this constitutional provision, the Republic Act 7607, entitled Empowering Small uphold farmers in their economic endeavors, or the Magna Carta of Small Farmers. So it primarily aims to realize equitable distribution of benefits and opportunities through the empowerment of the small farmers. So the law recognizes the country's obligation for the welfare and development of small farmers through giving them support in achieving their socio-economic goals. So furthermore, the law encourages small farmers, farm workers, farmers cooperatives, and organizations to participate in planning, organization, management, and implementation of agricultural programs and projects. So next, we have the statement of the problem. So the main thrust of this study is to determine the effects of pandemic to the livelihood of farmers. So, of the several barangays of Carmen Bohol, namely Bicao, La Victoria, Nueva Fersa, Poblacion Sur, and Villar Cayo. So, specifically, it seeks to answer the following questions. What is the profile of the farmers in terms of income, number of years in farming, size of the farm, and frequency of croppings per year? So number 2, what are the agricultural products that are affected by the pandemic in terms of field crops, vegetables, and fruits and nuts? So number 3, what are the effects of pandemic to the farmers in terms of expenses, income, lack of markets, demand, overproduction, low production, and added product costs? Number 4, is there a significant relationship between the profile of the farmers and the effects of the pandemic? Number 5, is there a significant relationship between the agricultural products of the farmers and effects of pandemic? Number 6, what action plan could be proposed out from the findings of the study? So next, we have the statement of the null hypothesis. So number 1, there is no significant relationship between the profile of the farmers and the effects of the pandemic. And lastly, there is no significant relationship between agricultural products of the farmers and the effects of the pandemic. So for the continuation of our presentation, Ms. Miole will discuss the significance of the study.
Thank you, Ms. Tutor. To continue the discussion, I will discuss the significance of the study. The researchers believe that the study will be beneficial to the following. First, the farmers. The farmers would make use of the result of the study in asking for government assistance to mitigate the effects of the pandemic to their livelihood. Second, lawmakers. This study would help lawmakers to formulate or craft laws or policies that would help farmers mitigate the effects of the pandemic. Third, school. The school would make use of the result of the study in making projects that will help the government provide assistance for the farmers that are affected by the pandemic. Fourth, agriculture students. This would help students taking up agriculture to make new products, technology, and techniques or ways to help the farmers mitigate the effects of the pandemic. Fifth, agriculture teachers. This study would guide the educators in teaching their students the effects of the pandemic to agriculture and how they can lessen the side effects. And lastly, the future researchers. This could be a great help to future researchers in exploring and finding solutions to the effects of the pandemic to the farmers. They can utilize this study as their reference. Next, we have research methodology. We have first the design. The descriptive survey design will be used to determine the effects of the pandemic to the livelihood of the farmers in Carmen Bohol. Descriptive survey design will be useful in obtaining the prevailing status or condition of the farmers. The purpose of the descriptive survey design is to make a reasonable result to the variable which estimates the effects of the pandemic of a defined population. The modified questionnaire out from the study of the Georgia Department of Agriculture is used to determine the effects of the pandemic to the livelihood of the farmers. Next, environment and participants. The local of the study is Carmen Bohol, specifically the barangays of Bicao, La Victoria, Nueva Forza, Poblacion Sur, and Villar Cayo. 50 farmers are selected from Carmen Bohol, 10 from Bicao, 10 from La Victoria, 10 from Nueva Forza, 10 from Poblacion Sur, and 10 from Villar Cayo. They are chosen as respondents in the study because their way of living is through farming. Next is the instruments. A modified questionnaire out from the study of the Georgia Department of Agriculture is used in determining the farmers' opinion about the effects of the pandemic to their livelihood. Through questionnaires, the participants will indicate their perception about the effects of the pandemic as we use the 4-point hedonic scale. Next is the data gathering procedure. Phase 1, asking permission. Phase 2, constructing the instrument. Phase 3, conducting the pilot testing. Phase 4, conducting the survey. To continue the discussion, Mr. Ernest Hutuhot will discuss the statistical treatment until the definition of terms.
Okay, so good day once again. I am Ernest Hutuhot, and let's proceed now to the statistical treatment of our study. So the data will be gathered, tallied, analyzed, and will be subjected to statistical treatment. And to determine the responses of the respondents on the effects of the pandemic to the livelihood of the farmers, weighted mean will be computed using this formula. So mean, or x, bar of x equals summation of f of x over n. So the researchers will use the range for the 4-point hedonic scale to identify the effects of the pandemic. And furthermore, to determine the significant relationships between the profile of the farmers and the effects of the pandemic, as well as the agricultural products of the farmers and the effects of the pandemic of Carmen Bohol, we will use the Pearson's product moment of correlation by Carl Pearson. It is used to measure the strength and direction of the linear relationships between two variables in employing the formula. So, by the way, we will use this Pearson's correlation. It's because we will determine the significant relationship of the two variables, which is the effects of the pandemic to the livelihood of farmers in our study. And to ascertain the correlations interpretation, the following range was used. So in determining the statistically significant of the compute R, t-test for correlation coefficient was used with the formula. So that's for our statistical treatment, and let's go now to the definition of terms. And to avoid confusion and to have a clear understanding of the concept of the whole research, the following terms are defined as used in this study. So these are the terms that we have used in conducting this study. So added product cost is the added value on the agricultural products of the farmers. Croppings, the total yield of farmers in a season, which includes the planting and harvesting season for the whole year. So demand, it is the readiness of the customer to buy agricultural products. So the effects is the result of the pandemic that caused a disruption to the livelihood of the farmers. And expenses, the cost, which is the monetary value of something spent by the farmers allocated to acquire something in return. So that's expenses. And income, the amount earned by farmers from selling agricultural products. And livelihood refers to the means of living by the farmers in generating income. So low production, it is producing agricultural products lesser than the normal amount. Markets, the establishments where farmers export or sell their products to the customers. So overproduction, it is a result of producing too much agricultural goods than the required needs and wants of the consumers. And lastly, pandemic, it is a spread of infectious disease to an entire nation or the whole world, which resulted to crisis. So that's for the definition of terms and for the statistical treatment. Thank you, and we are done with our presentation of our research. We are now ready for interrogation, questions, and suggestions to further improve this research.